In summer 2014, I taught a class on the shorter works of Herman Melville at Phillips State. We read Bartleby the Scrivener, Benito Cereno, and Billy Budd. And the goal of the class was to have them introduced to Melville through these shorter works that, all less than 100 pages, something that they could read within the space of a shortened semester. And the reason why I chose these works, I thought they all spoke to a lot of themes of, primarily, I think, misrecognition. All the stories, there's people constantly being misrecognized. Bartleby's, nobody understands anything about why he's doing, what are his motivations, what is he doing, anything. Benito Cereno, Babo, is being misrecognized as a slave when if actually he's the leader of a rebellion. Or in Billy Budd, Billy Budd's sort of recognized as an angelic figure, but he's also an angelic figure that has to be killed. For the Melville class, the writing assignment is they had to write a short paper, I think 2 to 3 pages is what I said, where they compare the themes, keywords, or concepts throughout 3 different tales. So they had to be able to draw in things from the different tales and connect them in some way. I told them it had to be at least 2 of them. For some of them, if they were willing to challenge themselves. I said, you should do all 3. What can you find that's true in all 3 tales? And how is Melville arguing about this, or what is he saying? I think being able to get, this is the same author that they're reading, so being able to trace that idea or that concept throughout 3 works by the same author gave them a better appreciation for the author. And a lot of them, they really said that in the essays that they wrote. Like, they could really understand what Melville's trying to say about justice and Billy Budd, or what he's trying to say about epistemology and Bartleby, and see how that changes or stays the same throughout the different works. One they probably enjoyed the most was Benito Cereno. Because in that story, the one captain comes aboard the ship and he thinks he's at a slave ship, but in fact he's on a ship that's entirely rebelled, and the slaves are actually in control of the ship, but they're putting on this play for this other white captain, so that way he thinks that the whites are still in charge, basically. I think they responded to that story partially because the way it's written, the whole story, you are seeing the sort of white captain's perspective. You think like something weird's happening, but you don't understand what's happening until the very end. So I think they like the surprise part of it. And I think they also, they like the fact that suddenly people who have no power do have some power. One they probably enjoyed the most was Benito Cereno. Because in that story, the one captain comes aboard the ship and he thinks he's at a slave ship, but in fact he's on a ship that's entirely rebelled, and the slaves are actually in control of the ship, but they're putting on this play for this other white captain, so that way he thinks that the whites are still in charge, basically. I think they responded to that story partially because the way it's written, the whole story, you are seeing the sort of white captain's perspective. You think like something weird's happening, but you don't understand what's happening until the very end. So I think they like the surprise part of it. And I think they also, they like the fact that suddenly people who have no power do have some power. The students at Phillips State and the students at Georgia State both have different challenges when reading some of the literary texts. So I've taught Benito Cereno at both places. When I taught it at Georgia State, they liked it generally. Getting them to read it was a challenge sometimes. But I don't think they quite identified with it the same way the folks at Phillips State did. A student who wanted to write a historical argument about Benito Cereno and the different uprisings that were happening around the same time around the turn of the 18th century. And his resources were online encyclopedia, or CD-ROM encyclopedia, and the books there in the library. So he didn't really have a lot to go with. I will say he made great use of the resources he had. I gave them some scholarly articles, and he made sure to find as much as he could with all those articles, find a lot in the library. But yeah, it is a challenge to get them for them to be able to find research. I brought in as much as possible, but there were limits to how much they could really do outside of just writing a regular argument essay. I was working with a student who was developing their works cited page, and they wanted to reference, it was in their CD-ROM encyclopedia, that it was an article in the CD-ROM encyclopedia that referenced something else that referenced another work. There was somebody's summary of I think a medieval scholar's work that was within this encyclopedia, and he wanted to, as a good scholar, to trace back as much as he could the original source. Like, what's the original source? How can I cite this? And normally that's something I'd really encourage at Georgia State, but at Phillips State he just doesn't have the ability to trace back to this original source, that he's going to have to, because of the limitations of resources, the CD-ROM encyclopedia is going to have to be what they cite. I think it's a really good impulse for them to want to go back to the original source, but sometimes the limitations of the environment don't let them do that. One thing that Hearn Melville offers us today in reading him is that he's always very attentive to the ways that we know things, and then how we know things. All these tales that we read in the class at Phillips State were all about how people misperceive other people and how they think they know something because of the way that they're perceiving things, and how much our perception limits our understanding in a lot of ways. And I think that that's really important because, there's so many different times with prisoners, for example. People have a certain understanding, way they perceive prisoners, that limits their understanding of them. And I think in a similar way, Melville does that in a lot of his works, where you can follow a tale the whole way and just wind up being totally wrong because of the way you initially perceive something, that your understanding goes down an entirely different path. So I think Melville offers us a little humility in what we think we're capable of knowing.